And here we are, everyone, in the spoiler room. Oh, yes, we are stocking up. It's stocking up month here in the spoiler room as we take a look at interesting films that involve the stock market, which, if you caught our conversation last week about Wall Street, far more interesting than it sounds on paper. What do you mean, movie about the stock market? Well, especially the one tonight. I've got some interesting stories with it. I'm sure my co hosts here tonight will also have an interesting tale or two. Yes, folks, thank you for venturing down the stairs, pulling up a chair, and cracking your favorite beverage. I got
You're
my
here.
damn good brandy old fashioned from Drink Wisconsin. No, they aren't a sponsor, but if you want to, call me. Because this is smooth. So tonight, we're heading back to 1983 with a cast made up of many comic icons of the time, or comic stars, or no.
Oh,
names.
the cast. The cast of this
cast,
movie is
indeed.
astounding.
But yes, you heard his voice. He is with me once again. The man with the wonderful first name. It is also the composer of almost all the music in all the shows you've heard on Special Mark Productions for this 17 years we've been doing this.
Jesus. Okay, yeah, I'm going to go spontaneously burst into a puff of dust at this point.
Did you feel your arteries harden?
Yes, I did. Right then. 17 years.
17
dear Lord.
years.
Okay.
It has been doing Special Mark Productions. He's done all our music for his shows. It's none other than Mr. Mark Woldridge. Hello, Mark. Thanks for joining us in the spoiler room.
Absolutely. It's just like when you said that you were doing Trading Places, it's just, it's some people talk about Die Hard as a holiday movie. Trading Places has been a holiday movie for me for years and years and years. So, yes.
It does take place during the holidays. It is a Christmas movie.
Technically a holiday movie there.
And there are some presents unwrapped on screen. Anyway, along with that, we have with us today none other than my right-hand man. The guy keeps coming back for more, Mr. Ian Simmons. Hello, Ian. How are you?
I'm doing great. I've always said that this movie and National Lampoon's Vacation were the films that made me a man.
If not, they introduced you to things.
Oh, it got me through puberty. I will agree with you there. Yes.
I've been waiting for Ian Simmons.
Mark, I saw you watch this on a VHS copy, and I had a lot of questions about the quality of certain scenes.
Yes, right here. It's not even in the original sleeve. It's a Hollywood video rental version. So the only thing is it's not beta. So my dad had it on beta, and we'll get into it. Hey, Mark, since you're new here, we're going to spare Ian tonight. Give a brief synopsis to our wonderful listeners out there about Trading Places and what it's about.
Well, you see, this is a retelling of the biblical book of Job, in which
he trades the one brother.
Oh, wait.
Mark froze.
Oh, wow.
Mark, come back. Traded what? Yeah.
Well, wow. Okay.
We're still streaming.
Okay. Yes.
Hey, everybody.
So where were we? We were talking about a synopsis of what this movie is, and we were saying that this is the biblical book of Job, and just thinking about how this is the powers above looking down upon their underlings and talking about how, well, I believe that I could do this to them and they will do this, and the other person saying, no, I don't believe that they'll do that. And so I just sort of thinking of it in terms of biblical terms for an R-rated early 80s comedy has always sort of amused me. But go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because Mark's gone now. I hope he comes back. But no, hey, you and me, we can hang out, Mark.
Yeah.
But no, it's interesting because I'd never thought of it in terms of Job. But yeah, because I think in the biblical story, it was a matter of trying to test the virtue of one of God's followers, and Satan was like, you've got these devoted followers who'll do anything that you ask them. What if you give them a really hard time of life? And God's like, yeah, I know a guy. This movie, there aren't very many virtuous people in this story.
And I think in that way, though, it's sort of like, no, Winthorpe is smart and he will do well no matter where he goes. But that's the whole idea, though. If you deal him a hard hand, he'll turn to crime, and he'll not be smart about that. And it is actually something that it's a question. I saw that in one of the reviews I read of this, they were questioning how intelligent both of the main characters actually are and how smart they thought they were. And so it's like Winthorpe, is he a smart guy? Billy Ray, how smart is he? And it's like, I think Billy Ray takes to the whole ideas of commodities trading like a fish to water. And so I really question, the one reviewer talking about how he's not as smart.
Well,
I don't know where I was
and I
going
think we'll talk about that, because I reviewed this movie. I did an episode of this on my show earlier this year. So I rewatched Trading Places somewhat recently, and I watched this a lot when I was a kid on cable because my parents loved it. I was way too young to see it, but it wasn't until watching it as an adult that I noticed that there was a sort of an element of cheating on the Billy Ray character as far as the way that he handles going from being a street hustler to being a Wall Street trader, whereas Winthorpe goes from being a Wall Street trader to being, someone who has to turn to crime on the streets. As far as the acumen, we don't have to talk about this now, but we're never really given an indication as to how or why Billy Ray has this aptitude for the stock market. It just seems to be like something that happens in the movie. Like, is there a scene missing or something where they say,
right, yes.
oh yeah, he actually went to business school and fell on hard times or something? Like, no, he's all of a sudden just talking about pork bellies as if he was, talking about the booze at the bar.
G.I. Joe with the kung fu grip. It's like he makes some analogies to it, but there's not exactly a 1-to-1 ratio as far as understanding those two things and making those apply in the business world. Yeah.
I think it would have been more interesting if, I know we're jumping way far afield here, but there is that episode of The Flintstones from forever ago where Fred is at a boardroom meeting or something. He's taking phone calls. And he's like, he has 3 catchphrases that someone who kind of knew about business taught him. And he just keeps repeating those at this board meeting. And everyone's really impressed with his acumen, but he's accidentally succeeding in business. I think that would have been a more interesting approach to take with Eddie Murphy's character. Like, oh yeah, go ahead and sell the pork bellies and, buy precious metals in Uganda or something like that. And they're like, that's brilliant, instead of him actually making these good calls. But anyhow,
I'm back.
Welcome back, Mark.
Hey, Mark.
What'd I miss? Anyway,
we winged it, and it was fine. We missed you, though.
No, you didn't miss me. See, I'm not needed. That's all. I'm not needed anywhere. No, you guys bring up a good point with Billy Ray. We'll just dive into this. The impression I always got with Billy Ray is they were implying, and again, folks, this film is almost 2 hours long. It cruises pretty quick. You could almost have used another 10 minutes maybe with the setup. But one of the impressions I get with the Billy Ray character is that he's a guy who fell on hard times, but he's a sharp individual. He just ends up having been in a situations, where he wasn't either given opportunities, and here he's actually given an opportunity and he seems to catch on quickly. Now they don't really establish that, but they roll into it. And the one thing that I noticed this time from the many other times I've watched this film, a lot of times when I was too young to watch it, hello 6th grade and my sick day. Yeah, 3 times in a row. Anyway, on beta.
Say no more.
I was well. The parents weren't around. I was being watched by my uncle upstairs. He was sleeping in the back, taking a nap. And
pause.
Yeah, I happened to watch the movie 3 times. Yeah. Anyway, I've said too much. But one of the things I noticed with his character is there's a passage of time that they don't exactly relay well in the film. It jumps time from when his first day to when he's actually going through the payroll checks. There's at least a few weeks in there, and you get the impression that Billy Ray is really trying to make this work because he's liking the money and the position that he's in, so and he does catch on quick. He's got some quick wit to him, which we see when he's even in jail. He doesn't balk even when the big guys are about to squash him like a bug. He's like, back the fuck up. Do you know who you messing? I mean, this guy's he's got some grit to him.
But there's a difference between being able to big yourself up in a jail situation and being able to make complicated financial decisions that actually work.
Yeah.
There is no montage of him learning and messing up. There's no learning curve aside from that wonderful joke that's actually in the trailer of the older brothers, the Dukes, explaining the stock market to him.
That is one of the best fourth wall breaks ever.
Oh my God. It's such a classic. I had forgotten about that part. I nearly spit out my drink when I was watching that. But it's like, oh, and pork bellies, pork futures related to bacon, which you might find in a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich. So good. But we get a fully developed picture of what's going on in the Dan Aykroyd character's life as far as his starting out. You can tell he's college educated. We get almost his full backstory, and then his full descent all the way down, and then his ascent back all the way up. But with the Eddie Murphy character, he doesn't really have a character. He is what the script needs him to be from scene to scene.
So, and I guess maybe you could say that is partially a little bit of life in America, in that, okay, the white guy, you can fill in his backstory, but the poor guy, he doesn't get a story. I mean, that's life in America to a certain extent.
Yeah, but that's also a bit of a reach for a broad studio comedy. John Landis was not thinking in these strokes back in 1983, neither was anybody else. That's something today where you can have the director and go like, oh, we didn't define this character because America doesn't define. No, this is 40 years ago. They weren't talking in this language.
Well, and I'm just saying that because people weren't talking in that language, because that's just how it is. I mean, that's an inherent in American culture, is white and racist. I mean, but anyway,
you're talking to a mixed race kid here who grew up with a black dad and a white mom, and they didn't cotton any of that. So we have to disagree on that one.
Fair enough.
Well, I mean, it's written by the guys who brought us Brewster's Millions. My Stepmother is an Alien, which we did cover here. We did cover that one. No, that wasn't the one we covered. Space Jam, Pure Luck, Astro Boy, Kindergarten Cop 2, and Space Jam: A New Legacy. That is the writing duo. And so amongst all those other films, you have Trading Places, which is their only second feature that they wrote.
That's an incredibly long career, though. Like when you look at that span, man. Okay.
It is. It's interesting that they're the ones that wrote. That's just like learning, like, the guys who basically saved Disney, literally saved Disney, also wrote and were the minds behind Little Shop of Horrors musical. Okay, you get the work of these guys. These writers after Brewster's Millions mostly did like kid type lighter fare, but here's this raunchy comedy that's addressing, for the best of 1983's ability, addressing class, class and environment versus genetics, which was a big topic at the time. So, I mean, they're being topical, but yeah, I'm with Ian. I don't think Landis or the writers were exactly thinking deeply. This is a metaphor and a speaking on the.
I do not mean to say that I was. No, that was that was not at the forefront of their mind when they were saying that.
No, but we know what was partly the forefront of their mind with that party scene in Billy Ray Valentine's, aka Louis Winthorpe's home. Yeah, because it's 80s, folks, early 80s especially. If you had a comedy, you had to have a topless scene, at least one. Didn't matter if it served anything at all. If there was an attractive female character in there, or even a extra, someone's losing their shirt.
Yeah,
that was the formula for 80s comedies back in the day.
It is strange now because American movies have become so like sexless in the last decade or so that to go back and watch these kind of time capsule movies, like what's going on here? Not that I'm complaining, but it just does seem so out of place, almost like a quota. Like, okay, we got to have a star, we got to have a producer, and we have to have breasts.
Well, what's funny in the trailer, and we'll talk about the trailer later, and if it's trailer trash or not. There's an alternate scene to a famous scene in Trading Places involving Jamie Lee Curtis. Jamie Lee Curtis in the movie for the first, now she at this point she's been doing a lot of horror, a lot of B horror and that, which has a reputation of the female performers in those movies losing clothing. She never did until this movie was the first time where she actually it was in front of the camera, bared
Trading clothing, yes.
Trading clothing. And it's interesting that you have this comedy is when she did it, but it's the same scene in the trailer, but she's clothed and she delivers it just slightly differently. And she's like, yeah. And, rent isn't the only thing that's not free around here. You sleep on the couch. In the movie, she takes her top off first, and then she says it. In the trailer, she's clothed, and then she kind of says it slightly differently in the trailer that we watched. So I thought that was interesting. They had a couple different cuts of that.
No, they just wanted to be able to show the trailer to more people. I mean, that's like approved for all audiences.
No red bad trailer. Yeah.
No,
right?
yeah.
But the I don't want to dive too much into this, but because I noticed that too in the trailer, the top that she has on is very flimsy. So
yeah,
I mean, it might as well have been painted on a piece of cell paper for like an animation.
But she was clothed. So
yeah,
but no, it just shows like that. So when we get this party scene, because folks, once Billy Ray they tell him, hey, you've got all this money, that you've got this job and everything. Of course, this guy who's been down and out, owing people money, and people have been kind of picking on him for being a quote unquote bum, he decides to come out and show him up. And then, hey, party at his house. And yeah, it is a quick turnaround, but at the same time, I found it amusing when he's sitting there going, who's been putting their coals out on my rug? Have you people not heard of coasters? And what sells that is Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy's comedic talent. I think someone else in this role just doesn't make that scene work. He makes that scene believable and work, and it just because of how he plays it. I loved him in that scene of how here's this guy who had nothing, and now he has a lot, and suddenly he's like, yeah, I kind of like this stuff, man. Don't break it.
I think that we're talking about how quickly some of these elements turn around, sort of like how quickly suddenly Billy Ray is, take care of my stuff. It's similarly how we don't see him becoming this, financial mastermind. But really, at its heart, this is a farce. This is a farcical comedy, and so I think these quick turns, it sort of fits in there. We don't want to dive too deeply because at its heart, this movie is ridiculous. And it has this sheen of, properness that I think that the whole financial institutions and the men's clubs and everything like that gives it. But at its heart, it's ridiculous because really, come on, at the end of it, it involves monkey rape. So...
And that's, honestly, it's something I think I blacked this out in my youth because I remembered the movie up to a certain point. It literally goes off the rails once they get on the train at the end of the movie.
There's some elements in there, just like
there's like
maybe 20, a little.
Yeah, there's 20 minutes of this movie towards the end. And this is why I think I can't forgive some of the sloppiness of the screenwriting. I'm like, you had the time in this 2-hour comedy to flesh some of this out, but then you got Franken and Davis and Jim Belushi, and all this other stuff in the train scene, which just reads like 15 rejected Saturday Night Live skits.
Yes, it is. Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's, cute and everything, but you could cut that out of the movie and it would still be the same picture because at the end you get to the trading floor and the whole thing with the Dukes and the buying and selling, which is a great way to end the movie. But yeah, it's just this weird segment that doesn't really belong in there in that climax.
It's an extended Three's Company sketch, pretty much, where they just all they have to do is swap the briefcases. That's all it is, pretty much. And there's some stuff
Ha.
Merry New Year, beef jerky
Merry
time.
New Year.
Yes,
dude. I would sit there and go, beef jerky time.
Yeah.
I would just say beef jerky time every so often, just because Eddie Murphy, the way he shines in this with his comedic talent, just shines in this film. But on the end, you're like, wait, it's almost as if they weren't quite sure how they were going to get from point B to point C in this film. So let's do this, but let's make it funny. Never mind the fact that she's posing as Inga from Sweden. and but you're wearing lederhosen. And Beeks has seen her before, but he seems to have blanked out of his mind, even with the pigtails. You can tell that's the same woman that he paid money to set up Winthorpe initially, so that his fiance would reject him. And that little hole, that one of the holes, and I'm watching this going, damn it, there's another hole. And
then Winthorpe comes in as the sort of quasi Rasta. It's just like, not recognizing the others, but then Winthorpe in this most laughable outfit. We won't get into the whole
blackface.
We won't get into that aspect of it. It's just like, wow. And you're sitting here in the same train car with Beeks, the guy that you're trying to pull one over on. Yeah.
Well, not only that, but Beeks was the instrument by which Winthorpe was set up.
Yeah.
So he had a profile on this guy, pictures. He was in the giant board meeting at the beginning where he got framed. So it's like, it's Dan Aykroyd in blackface. What are you doing here?
Yes.
Maybe he was in shock that he saw Dan Aykroyd in blackface. His brain was rejecting it, going, that can't be Winthorpe.
Here's the thing. If they wanted to be clever about it, you could play Beeks up as this incredible racist, and that whole line of like, everybody looks the same. Maybe he could be like, I didn't recognize him because I thought he was just a black guy. That's an angle you could play with it, instead of this like, yes, I'm an incredibly smart Washington mover and shaker, a corporate hitman or hatchet man, but I don't recognize a guy that I saw 3 days ago.
Head of security. I know.
Head of security, exactly.
Before we keep going, because there's some other things I want to address that happened a little earlier on in the film. We got Robert Baum back with us. Infobomb is with us, and he said one of the earliest R-rated films I saw, I think it was third or fourth such film I saw before I turned 14. Like all of us, yes. Video rental didn't card you folks, and if your parents had cable, well, then that even made it even better. And then he said had virtual cameos, as we mentioned, Jim Belushi, and we did have Bo Diddley in there as well.
Frank Oz. Can we say Frank Oz
is the cop?
Oh my God, that scene is amazing.
That scene with Frank Oz as the cop going, Lewis Winthorpe.
Winthorpe, La Boheme. It's an opera.
It's an opera. Yeah, I mean, one of the rare times you get to see Frank Oz in person, in front of the camera, not with a hand up a Muppet's butt.
And I'm blanking on his name. The guy that's one of the Dukes sends back into the pit at the very end. He is another one of the puppeteers. He was involved with. Yes, he was also one of the Muppeteers with the Muppets as well.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Wow.
And I don't remember his name right offhand, but yes, he was also involved with the Muppets, and that's with the Frank Oz tie-in. I am certain, pretty much.
Oh, that's got to be for sure. And Robert Bobo says, and a drunken pre-Senate Al Franken. Absolutely.
Yes.
And Davis was the other guy with him. They were writing partners on SNL for a while. Yeah.
Oh yeah. They were the bagmen who didn't notice the guy in a monkey suit. They thought it was a monkey. They're that drunk. He goes, Robert Infobob says, I wonder what the mood was like on set given Landis's trouble regarding Twilight Zone. Yeah, I'm wondering that too. Though he had enough of his friends around him because he's making this with a lot of his friends. I think maybe he had some support. Bill Cobb as the bartender. Oh yeah, there's a lot of cameos in this. Like this train scene is like, let's feature our friends as cameos for. And then
Yeah,
he
that-
also.
that- Well, I was going to say back on that Twilight Zone thing. Aaron Christensen did a live stream on Twilight Zone the movie for the 40th anniversary a few weeks ago, and they talked about this. And apparently, if I remember correctly, a lot of that court case and the tragedy of Landis's segment that didn't come out until much later, like several years later,
Yeah.
because it took a while to get to court. So yes, the initial story was that there was this big tragedy, and Vic Morrow and a couple of kids died on the set, but I don't think Landis's culpability really came to light until later. So
After
it may have
this
been
movie,
like,
yeah.
like, oh yeah, it was sad what happened, but my God, I didn't realize you were that involved, sir. Yes.
An infobomb dropping the info. It was originally called Black and White, but he was thrown out, but he's not sure if it was Murphy's inclusion was a factor. I do remember that mentioning that it was listed as Black and White at one time. It was going to be called that. And he goes, I wonder how much outrage was incurred by Dan Aykroyd being a Rastafarian. In 83, probably not so much, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. At that
Unfortunately, this is already seen as like a big SNL reunion type group of people and comedians, and people just were like, okay, comedy was definitely, there's a reason why, especially your shock comedians and just comedy in general was huge in the 80s. Stand-up and everything was just such a golden age for comedy. Golden age as far as the talent, as far as the material that they presented, very problematic in some aspects that from 2023 eyes, but back then
you don't have to go even that far, Mark. I mean, you had in the 2010s, famously had Jimmy Kimmel dressing up in blackface playing a basketball player, Sarah Silverman, like all these comedians now who will denounce that and try and sweep it under the rug. They're like, oh yeah, it was funny. And that's the thing is, I'm going to tread very lightly here. I think a lot of that stuff is ridiculous, but there was an audience for it, and that audience was not exclusively white.
Yeah, no, it just a completely different. It was a different mindset of culture at the time when it came to comedy. It really was. Good or bad, and I'm not excusing anything. I'm just saying it was a different approach.
See also Revenge of the Nerds. I mean, as far as like movies that haven't aged well.
No.
Yeah.
And Robert Baum says Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder.
That's right.
And not only that, but look at some of the dialogue in Tropic Thunder is problematic for those who are special needs. One of his catchphrases, you never go full, I mean, comedy has always treaded the edge and tried to ruffle feathers on purpose for some reasons. And in this film, the blackface really isn't needed. If he's going to be South African, he doesn't have to be black to be South African.
Well, he kind of does because, okay, look, Elon Musk aside, when you think of African, even South African, if he just shows up as Dan Aykroyd and he's got dreads, and you're like, hey, what's going on here? Are you appropriating or, especially if he has the accent, I don't know what's going on there.
Well, he should have showed up as a blind guy. I think he would have done better as a blind guy, but maybe he'd have sunglasses and a hat, be far more in disguise that Beeks doesn't recognize.
He could have showed up as Dr. Detroit.
Or he showed up as Dr. Detroit. There you go. I mean, because it was 2 New Year's and everybody was dressed in costume, there's nothing saying he had to be acting in that role either.
Right.
I don't want to hang on it too much longer, but I'm just saying, we're looking at it 2023 eyes, folks. If you haven't seen this movie before, we're letting you know this is in here. This is why we're just trying to roll some context in there, not excusing it, just saying this is why it was presented. I mean, just like you get, Beeks. They capture Beeks. They handcuff him. They throw him in the monkey suit that James Belushi's character was in, and they throw him in the cage with the gorilla.
Apes, man. Apes.
And there's some ape love going on with him.
Yeah. female. Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
But again, you're right though. This is meant satirical. This is farcical. This is supposed to be
It's a farce. It is absolutely a farce. Yes.
It's supposed to be pointing at making fun of not just the rich at the time, you know, and upper class. It makes fun of the yuppie. I mean, we've got all of Winthorpe's friends who, if you've ever seen a yuppie trope, these folks fit it all. From his fiance who talks just wow. I'm like, really? Her? Really? Mumsy doesn't want you to do like, oh my God, that would but she played it well. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah.
Played exactly like it's supposed to be. And then you get the Todd and his group of frat boys who basically sing a song that is very misogynistic about their girlfriends sitting there at the table, and the girls are just laughing.
And he stepped on the ball.
I used to say that as well because of the way she stepped on the ball,
which is a reference to another movie, of course.
Yes, it is.
I don't think I know what that reference is.
It's a reference to Auntie Mame. That's actually a story from there where they're talking about something which went horribly wrong in a tennis match, and one of the lines is, "And he stepped on the ball," and so that's pretty much a callback to that previous movie.
Yeah.
All right.
Robert Bob says G. Gordon Liddy was possibly going to be cast as Beaks, but the monkey rape scene prompted him to say no.
I draw the line at monkey rape.
I draw the line at monkey sex. All right, But I mean, I'm glad they picked who they did for Beaks because he was the universal asshole. He's the asshole from Breakfast Club. So I mean, it's only natural that you would cast him as that.
Yes.
Right.
He was hard typecast in the 80s. Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, we've got our Twitter viewer here. Giz Dr. Forever. Billy Crystal used blackface on Saturday Night Live to portray Sammy Davis Sterling. He did. It was more commonly used than the examples that you see on the Twitterverse or whatever verse it is out there now, Threadverse. It was actually quite prevalent. Some of those have, faded in obscurity until someone needs to pull it out. But, it's in there. So you've got making fun of yuppies. You've got making fun of the rich folks. Our two main characters are on this. We see they're two sides of the same coin in many respects as far as their personality and abilities go, though Winthorpe knows a little bit more of the ins and outs of trading. I would think what would have been nice in the film is maybe seeing Billy Ray give a little lesson to basically Jamie Lee Curtis's character does that, but it would be interesting to see Billy Ray have him a situation to where Billy Ray gives him some pointers about how to survive. What to say or not to say, like if they're going to go into a bar or something for something, information or something, they could have done it. They could have done the opposite angle as well. So you didn't just have Winthorpe going, yeah, what you experienced, you're never going to experience ever,
Yeah.
About the commodities and trade.
The line walking in a kill or be killed sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. The kill or be killed. And yeah, it's interesting. Our Duke characters are played by a couple of very classic actors in this. We've got Ralph Bellamy and Don Amici, who was on his resurgence. He also did Cocoon, I think, just after this. I think it was Cocoon. So Don Amici was back in because for a little while it was cool to cast old folks because old folks are funny, right?
Well,
or
adorable.
And
it sort of pains me to think about how Wilford Brimley, when he was in Cocoon, was only 52 or something like that.
Well, look at him in the Thing. Look at him in the Thing, for crying out loud.
I just turned 50, and I don't look like that. I mean,
well, those guys came from the older generation. They'd been through wars and stuff. So by the time they were
Yeah.
50, they looked like 70 because
they've lived through a lot at that point. Yes.
Right, because I remember that scene. I don't think I've ever seen Cocoon, but I've seen the trailer from when I was a kid, and I just remember, you won't get sick, you won't get any older, and you won't ever die. I'm like, that guy's like 75 years old. No, he's like in his 50s.
He was like 52, 54 when he played that role. Yeah. Yes.
And you won't get diabetes. But if you do get diabetes, you can get your diabetes accessories at the phone number below. Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I do love the portrayal of the Yuppies. The funny thing with the setup for Winthorpe, though, how he initially gets kicked out of the club, but we marked 3 $50 bills with red X.
Yeah.
I'm like, it was stolen from the coat closet. I'm like, man, this is such a wafer thin type of, and they just take his word for it. It's just like, never mind that, Winthorpe's been with him forever. Nope. This guy said he's guilty. He's got these.
And really, that's what they're sort of showing is that, and that's shown in other scenes as well, is that the relationships in the upper crust are very superficial. Sort of like how when Winthorpe goes back to his friends and says, I can count on you all as character witnesses. And they're like, screw you. No, it's like showing about how the relationships that he had were all superficial and they were not really, really meaningful or anything like that. And it wasn't until he was down in the gutter that he found his more meaningful relationships. So it has something to say there as far as class and money and relationships there, I suppose, as far as,
well, and the Dukes had a plan for the switchback. They were going to bring Winthorpe back into the fold and sweep all that stuff under the rug, because they realized that, as cute as their bet was, the $1 bet to destroy people's lives, Winthorpe was a commodity in and of itself. He was a brilliant trader and a businessman who was on his way up, who could continue making their firm tons of money. So they weren't just going to leave him in the gutter stranded. They wanted to prove that they were right, or one was right and one was wrong, and then get him back into the fold and keep that money train going. It was a bit of a pause, but they knew where their bread was buttered, and they were going to kick. Well, it's interesting because the plan, I think, was to kick Billy Ray Valentine to the curb, but considering his success, I do find it a little bit hard to believe that they would not try and, even if it's just to continue exploiting him, they wouldn't try and do something with him, because they realized he was some kind of a prodigy.
But within that scene, when it's revealed, because Billy Ray... So there's a holiday Christmas scene. Winthorpe finally decides, okay, Billy Ray has this grand plan of ruining my life. I'm going to ruin his. So he sneaks into this worst Santa costume ever. And after sticking all this food in the Santa costume,
he's got all the bad drugs in here.
He dumps all these just random drugs into Billy Ray's office desk, and then calls the Dukes and makes a big scene to go, he's got all the drugs in here: Quaaludes, yellows, marijuana, pot. He just found this random bag of drugs and he just dumps in the bag, And it was funny that later Billy Ray is putting them all the way except the one joint. He kind of
and I mean, if we're talking about being able to have street smarts, I mean, hey, Winthorpe scored himself a big bag of drugs there. So he did. I mean, he did okay.
Especially that vial of cocaine. He pulls it out. He's like, cocaine, and it's like this bottle of I'm like, holy shit, where did he get that from?
Yeah.
So he tries to set it up, and of course it goes wrong. And he's got a gun that he bought from, I think that was Bo Diddley. That
was Bo Diddley. Yeah.
Bo Diddley running the gun.
The thinnest watch in do you have a receipt?
Bucks.
Yeah. It's worth $50. How much for the gun? The look that Bo Diddley gives him. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just love the way that Aykroyd pronounces and Stad.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get the feeling like if this were set a couple years later, the Dukes trading firm would have shared floor space with Patrick Bateman's from American Psycho. That's the crossover I want to see.
Oh my God! Wow, that is a crossover. I wouldn't mind seeing it. That'd be interesting for sure. Uh, oh, Info Bob mentions that Billy Crystal did have some cred. He grew up with Billie Holiday as his babysitter. His dad owned a record store that dealt in jazz music, and yeah, that's true. Not sure if that gives him a pass for using blackface in comedy, but
Yeah,
you know, eh,
it was the 80s. Yeah.
it was the 80s, which, just like we with the drugs that they choose in here, of course they pick cocaine. It surprised me that they chose PCP to set up because it's white powder in a bag, because Frank Oz's cop character gets stopped by Beaks to help set up.
PCP, angel dust. You know what this stuff does to kids?
You see what this kid stuff did? I'm like, wow, they go PCP, because everybody thinks cocaine because it's a white powder, and it's like, and it's changed too. Some people say heroin. At one point, they thought he had heroin.
Yeah.
His fiance.
That's right. Yeah. No, it was PCP, angel dust.
Yeah. He corrects her. It's like, no, it's not heroin. It's PCP. Completely different drug. And then we've got to talk about Jamie Lee Curtis in here, who actually, again, what helps, I think, make this film keep it comical and it works is Jamie Lee Curtis puts in a solid performance, I think, in here, actually, as the prostitute who helps out Winthorpe because she takes pity on him. I liked her character throughout this film. I mean, the way she was. I mean, she wasn't a complete airhead or bimbo like they could have written her. They saved that for Winthorpe's girlfriend, I think, because you get the one scene in there where he goes, "You're a prostitute," and she's like, "Yeah, I got 24,000 in T-bills gaining interest. I got 3 more years of it." She's figured out her financials at least, so she's got some smarts to her. How'd you feel about her character and her performance, Ian?
Well, it is the whole cliche of the hooker with a heart sort of thing.
It is the hooker with the heart.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, it's I don't know, it's the cliche. It's like, yeah, it's like I thought that it was a cliche, but she did it well. I mean, really, when you come right down to it, there's a reason why cliches have a place in movies, is because they resonate and they continue to come back because they work. I mean, so like it might be cultural shorthand for a bunch of things, but no, it's just like we like these sort of things that they bring to a story, and I think it fit in.
What about you, Ian?
I mean, I like Jamie Lee Curtis. I like this character, kind of. I just think she kind of has the same problem that Eddie Valentine had, and that's just a problem of the writing. The fact that she had this kind of financial acumen, like, so I'm supposed to believe that in Philadelphia or wherever this took place,
yeah, it's Philly.
Everybody who lives in the ghetto is secretly a financial genius who's just falling on hard times. I'm like, there's no variation in this. There's more nuance in the privilege. This is something we talked about a bit earlier. There's more character nuance and realism in the upper crust, call it white financial sector characters, than there are in the the lower class character, which almost kind of implies that the people who wrote the film, they kind of like projecting stuff, in one direction instead of getting some nuance and actual character. I feel like if Eddie Murphy, I don't know what input he had. Well, apparently he didn't have any input on the script, but I feel like if he had some input on the screenwriting and the development of his character, and even maybe Jamie Lee Curtis's character, there just could have been some flavor in it, rather than like, I see where all of this is going. And it helps that there are a lot of laughs and these kind of funny set pieces, but if you just look at it from a story standpoint, it's not very sharp.
Yeah. When I think about the comedic glue that holds a lot of it together, I actually think of Denholm Elliott in this movie.
Oh, Denholm Elliott is phenomenal in this.
When we're talking about a farce, and Denholm Elliott, he the things that he plays sort of straight. He is the observer. He is around these circumstances that are happening, and is sort of like the observer to them. But to me, his sort of the very sort of British reaction, which is not overreacting to anything. His most emphatic delivery is eggnog,
Yeah.
where his I mean, it's just sort of like his very tempered delivery and everything. I really think that he is the glue that holds this movie together and keeps it from sort of flying off into total farcedom. It was that sort of the feeling of normalcy almost that he brings to it. Just the normal. He's normal in this movie. There's the normal butler, and he is sort of cast into these absolutely crazy circumstances. The fact that he plays this the whole Irish minister sort of thing on the train gets a little bit even more batshit insane at that point. But everything he brings to it at that point sort of reels everything back in a little bit and makes it feel that's what keeps the steady core of this movie, I think. And without him, I don't think we would have had half the movie it was in the first place.
Well, yeah, I mean, because not only is he grounded and he's aware of all the situations, and he's made to go along with this because the Dukes employ him, but at the same time, he's not under any impression. He has no hero worship. He has no like, oh my God, I want to be like these people that he's serving or whatnot. He's just a guy doing his job and trying to do it well.
That's your house, sir.
Yeah. But at the same time, he shows human elements. He's the most human and least caricature,
Yes.
I would say.
Yes.
Probably out of the characters here. I'm not saying he's not a complete non-caricature, but I'm just saying out of all your characters in this, I would say he's probably one of the least caricatures. He's still a butler and he's still doing the butler roles, but his personality seems a little more well-rounded in that, you know, he's having a little fun when Billy Ray's friends are over. You know, he's like, oh, seems like the party was a success to me, you know?
Well, yeah, even when he's talking to Billy Ray and when he goes in and he has that little exchange with Billy Ray and he talks to what's Denholm? What's his name in the movie? I forget. But he says, well, what do they want from me? And he says, I don't know. It's just like, be yourself. They can't take that from you. And I just thought that was a wonderful exchange. Just like, and finding the humanity of the story in that it's a whole, there's a whole lot of greed and grasping going on with trying to get more and more money with commodities exchange. But in the end, it's being yourself because that's all you'll ever have.
What I haven't watched the movie in a little bit, but what was the switch or the moment that Coleman, that's Denholm Elliott's character.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. When did he switch to being on the side of Billy Ray and Valentine in terms of helping to be part of that whole train fiasco where he's like dressing up in disguise versus just being a butler and or
I'm pretty sure it was when Winthrop OD'd. And so they brought Winthrop back.
Yep.
And that would be when it's like, okay, this is having real human consequences. It's like Winthrop almost dies because of this whole crazy bet that the Dukes put on. Okay. And so I think that would really be when Coleman switched sides and stopped being just the butler and really decided to take a side.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that because I hadn't really thought of it in that context because it's kind of played for, you know, a laugh in the movie. But yeah, when you put it that way, I can totally see that.
Yeah, because he cared about Winthrop. He did not like going along with it, but he likes having a job, and he knew the Dukes would cut him immediately, so he went along with it. And until then, I mean, you even see it a little bit when he has to reject Winthrop when Winthrop initially comes to the door and he tries to get in.
It pains him. It pains
him to do that, and you can even see that look. He does that wonderful. Colm, he does this wonderful nuance of just with this character. Like the last time when he tells him to go away, he does this pause to where he just kind of looks away. He can't even look at Winthrop, but he's got this painful look on his face, like just please go away. I can't do this. And I can't reject you one more time, but he legitimately cares for Winthorpe. He likes the guy, and he hated to see what the Dukes did to him. And then, it was the OD thing. It was like, well, that's the final straw. He's like, I don't care now, and then when they come up with the plausible idea of how to stick it to the Dukes, he's in. He's like, I'm tired. They hurt this guy that I care about, that drove him almost to death. It's one thing, okay, you're going to do it or whatnot. Fine, I'll go along with that, because he figures Winthorpe would bounce back. He knows the guy, and he started to, but things take a turn, and then, he tries to kill himself. So
here's a question. Okay, so when Coleman was, whose butler was he?
He was Winthorpe's initially,
but under the employ of the Dukes.
He worked for the Dukes.
Yeah.
So was Winthorpe living in a home furnished by the Dukes?
Yes.
Okay, so how long? This is what I'm getting at here is almost like a rabbit hole of the Coleman character almost doesn't make sense. I appreciate everything that you guys are saying, and I think that it's correct. But I'm thinking, like, this isn't like an Alfred Bruce Wayne situation where Coleman has been raising Winthorpe since birth. Why does he like Winthorpe? Because at the beginning of this movie, Winthorpe is essentially no better than than Todd or those other, dweebs at the country club. So I can understand maybe his affection for him, because they live together. But in terms of like the behavior that he would have witnessed, there's nothing to think to suggest that he would have seen anything in him beyond like, this guy is just same asshole as Todd, and he's been over a dozen times, and I hate that guy.
And I do agree with you. I think the way that Winthorpe treated Coleman at the beginning of the movie was dismissive. Absolutely agree with you on that. And I think it speaks to Coleman's character, that it was the fact that the Dukes drove someone to the point of death. It's not necessary. It's sort of like just the fact that.
Well, it's not necessarily that it's Winthorpe. It's the fact that they've taken this person and the Dukes have destroyed this person.
Well, but here's my question, though.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, but I want to put that to the test. It's Dan Aykroyd is playing Winthorpe, and he's a lovable comedic actor that we've seen in other films and on SNL. He's likable. If this character had been Todd, do you think, and this is an honest question, do you think Coleman would have cared about this whole like bringing someone to the brink of death? Because everything we see of Todd, we don't see a whole lot of him, but he in that ilk, he's not likable. He's played by a lesser known character actor. How much of our familiarity with Aykroyd as a personality helps us to get on his side, even though there's nothing about his character that would suggest that we should?
It's the way Aykroyd plays this character from the start. He's doing it satirical for the entertainment. But if we look at this character, say he's in Philly, this character is actually in Philly. You get the impression with this guy who, yes, he's had everything handed to him and everything, but it's almost more like he's playing the part of upstart, whereas Todd feels more genuine. It always feels, even from the start when you meet Winthorpe, and it's just because of the way Dan Aykroyd plays it, and you're right. It might be because we know the actor, but looking at that character the way he would be, say, in real life, it feels like he is acting this way because of his status that he feels like he should, and maybe Coleman sees that, because you always get the impression, even when he is with his friends, he's still working to get them to like him, because they get trade barbs in the club a bit because he was successful. It's like, they do that banter, and it's almost like he's playing up the role of his status, and that's not who he actually is. Winthorpe is, and maybe I'm wrong, but you know what I'm saying is, deep down inside, maybe he's not, but he's.
I get what you're saying, but I get what you're saying, but just based on like what I'm seeing on screen and what I'm imagining the screenplay is like, on paper, Winthorpe is Todd.
Yeah, it's
in
true.
performance. it's Dan Aykroyd.
It's
So
Dan
we're
Aykroyd,
on his
yeah.
side. If you had the actor who played Todd playing Dan Aykroyd playing Winthorpe,
Yeah.
and then you kind of swap them over, because
Yeah.
Dan
Doesn't work.
Aykroyd could play, an entitled jerk who you're like, in a bit part. But I think if you have the actor who played Todd, and I don't have his name right here,
Yeah.
I don't think you have the same. I mean, it's definitely a different movie because
Yeah.
he probably doesn't have the comedic chops that Aykroyd had. But yeah, I'm going down this mental rabbit hole, and I'll pull myself out because I don't want to derail the show.
It's a comedy. I mean,
Mhm.
in the end of the day, I'm surprised it doesn't have National Lampoon's Trading Places on the top of it in the way this plays out in many aspects of it. We also got another comment here from the GZ Dr. Forever. He says, do you think the social commentary on the film is just that? We have tons of financial geniuses in these areas. They just need an opportunity, hence affirmative action. They are overlooked because of zip code. That could be what they're going for. I don't know. I think you're giving it more credit. Maybe that's what they were going for, but it is 83, so it's hard to say if they were trying to go for that deep of a social commentary.
And I think probably in the 83 perspective, it's like people have money because they have money more than anything else. It's like it's the social commentary of that. And money perpetuates and begets money.
I would also challenge the notion that there are tons of financial geniuses anywhere, because no matter
at least
the
three of the
social strata,
characters that we have, 2 or 3.
well, I'm just saying, like, this whole idea of like, oh, we need affirmative action because there's tons of undiscovered talent out there. I'm like, the status of financial genius is it's rarefied air. So I don't think I understand the point, but it's like it's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, it's hard to say what they were going for with it. I think they were mostly, maybe even not going so far as that deep. I think they were mostly saying, because this is 83, and so, like I said, the yuppie comedy was out there. The class warfare was definitely building up with the rich versus poor aspect, which hasn't gone away, but it definitely started hit its peak during the Reagan era. And so I think that's what they were going for, more so than maybe necessarily commentary with the individual characters. If that is in here, I'm not sure if that was intentional or if they were doing it just because it helped move the plot of the story more so than anything. Maybe, it's hard to say with that. What else do we got in here? Oh, Robert Bob says, hearing Coleman say scumbag is a rib tickling moment. It is definitely that. Yes.
And that comes back to how Coleman is such a grounding element in the moment, in the movie. And when he shows emotion and when he lets loose what he's really thinking, it's a lovely moment. It was like when he shows when he lets loose. When he lets loose, it's really it's such a lovely
endearing.
understory.
Yeah.
Yes, it absolutely is.
Yeah, I never really thought about this movie in terms of Denholm Elliott being the glue, but I think you're absolutely right. I actually went and watched the tank scene from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade over the weekend because I wanted to show my son something from Indiana Jones that didn't involve face melting Nazis. And he's in that scene. He's been captured in the tank with Sean Connery's character. And I can't remember if his character was supposed to be drunk or something. He's like really like loose and kind of silly, but it's just so much fun to watch. And you get a little bit of that in this movie, but yeah, he's got some great range, and man.
Oh, he does. He's a great actor, and he's got some comedic talent, and he shows it here. I mean, but you're right. It really is more and more of, in fact, because he's part of the he and Ophelia named for Jamie Lee Curtis's character Ophelia are the two that put up the most money for the investment that they were going to do once they get the actual frozen orange juice report.
See, this is one of the best things about this movie is that there are actual web pages dedicated to explaining what the hell is happening at the end of this movie.
I got to read those web pages because I still don't know what the hell is going on.
It's the whole idea, and really they're bringing in money, but it doesn't matter that much because when they start selling, they're selling things they don't own yet. It's the idea of selling futures on things. So they're selling contracts. And because I've read a lot of these pages, and it's the whole idea of they're selling a contract, which is like a truck worth of frozen concentrated orange juice, like 10,000 pounds of it. So each one of these contracts is, they're selling it for like $1.42, where it comes down to 29 cents. So it's thousands of dollars per contract, or thousands of, 10,000 per contract, and they have tens of thousands of contracts at the end. And so one page I read talked about how they cleared something on the order of $232 million at the end of this. And also, let it be said that there was no rule before this movie about trading from insider information, and that on Wall Street there is now the Eddie Murphy rule, that if something happens that causes a price to fluctuate that greatly, they will stop trading. So something like this can't happen. So actually, this movie did change how Wall Street deals with things.
Well, I got to say, because we talked about Wall Street last week, I was thinking about trading places while watching that movie. And yeah, I still, the whole like orange juice futures and the commodities thing, that's a bit, I do have to do some reading so I can fully understand it. But I understood it a little bit more watching Wall Street and what they were doing with those trades, because it still kind of comes down to the same climax. We're going to try and force the other guy to, buy low and sell higher. I'm getting it backwards.
Yeah.
But essentially to clean them out, and where we take all the gain, and then the people who were on top 10 minutes ago when the bell rang are now at the very bottom when the bell rings again.
Yep.
Yeah,
like how the Dukes, they actually said, where are we going to get $394 million?
From? Yeah. Well, it's because it's the more volatile stock. In Wall Street, what we looked at, it was real estate contracts. That was businesses
and airlines,
and airlines. It was businesses, not so much necessarily commodities themselves. Commodities, my understanding, limited as it is that commodities is, as proven in trading places, far more volatile, and you can lose your money within the same 10 minutes.
Yes.
Versus, in Wall Street, it was a little bit more, there was still a margin there, but not quite as hefty as,
well, and the volatility in Wall Street came down to at the end where Charlie Sheen screws Gordon Gekko, essentially is him with that network of people he built up, rigging the bidding on the stock.
Right.
Trying to undercut him.
And that was bidding on the stock to where it wasn't so much you're losing money you earned and then lost. It was just you outlost the bid. The way they did it more. It's interesting. This was filmed that I still don't quite understand the stock part either. I'll have to check that out. But it's edited. It's edited in such a way that it's riveting. I'm watching it even the second time, which is like the 50th time, whatever I watched it. I'm sitting here going, I really don't understand what all is going on here.
So here's
at the same time, I'm riveted.
Here's the nutshell of what's going on. Is that it centers around the crop report for the oranges, and the Dukes think it's going to be a bad harvest, and so there's not going to be a lot of oranges. But that's not actually what happens. So when the Duke guy goes out, he's buying all of the futures that he can, because at the price that it starts, because he is pretty sure that to supply them later on, people will be spending even more to get those. So he's buying all of those that he can. But Winthorpe and Billy Ray, they know that there's actually going to be a lot of oranges, and there's going to be no problem with supply. So they're selling right away, which is sort of crazy. So they just start selling and selling and selling, and then the crop report actually comes out, and they find out that it's fine. So all of these people are suddenly in this horrible position where they know they've overspent. So they're trying to
To
get
unload
rid
their
of these
stock,
things,
yeah.
to unload these things, so they're not
Right.
in this horribly unbalanced position. So so they're selling and selling, which is driving down the price. And so at the end of it, what happens is that Billy Ray and Winthorpe are holding a ton of contracts that they have bought or that they have bought for really, really cheap, but
Right.
people are going to pay a ton to fulfill. So it's like what, 4.5 times or so,
Right.
because it's like it stops at 29 cents per pound, and the high was at $1.45 a pound, and it's something like at least 20,000 contracts that they bought. So that's really the essence of it. That there's the that they thought there was going to be a limited supply. There ended up not being a limited supply. And so they're going to be able to fulfill all of these contracts that people way overspent for.
And it's the idea of it's not a lot of high value stock, but there's a lot of it. So they end up making a lot of money because they have so much little. So it's not so much value as in quantity. They have a huge quantity, which, like you said, okay. So that makes a little more sense. So there you go, folks. Now you can understand partially the ending of Trading Places, which has a wonderful ending, a fun, happy ending. Winthorpe is with Ophelia. Billy Ray has someone he met. Oh, we lost Mark. Billy Ray has someone he met. We're not quite sure who. And even Coleman has someone as well. So I mean, it's a happy ending. Yay! They stuck it to the rich guys who we talked about crossovers end up showing up briefly in Coming to America, which was a wonderful cameo. I loved that they got them for the cameo in Coming to America. You remember that cameo?
I've never seen Coming to America.
What?
Yeah, and it's the 35th anniversary this year, so I think it's about
sweet
time
Jesus.
I give it a go.
I already had.
I've seen bits of it, but I've never sat down to watch the entire thing from start to finish.
I've literally just had my birthday. I already feel old, and now you just told me that Coming to America is going to be 35 years old. Thank you very much.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. Oh, I get to come back in time just to turn into another puff of dust again. Dear God.
It was a great cameo in Coming to America. If you had seen Trading Places,
we're back. Yes.
Oh, I thought they were gonna say they were gonna be like janitors at McDougal's or something like.
No, they're actually bums. They're out on the street.
Oh, are they? Okay.
And
nice.
And Billy and Eddie Murphy's character just walks by, and he's got a whole ton of money that he got from I think one of his relatives or something for a wedding or whatever, but he doesn't want to go back to his character. So he just takes the money that's in a paper bag and he puts it down in front of these bums, and they pull back the blanket, and all of a sudden it's Don Amici and Bellamy, and they go,
yes.
he's like, we're back because it's thousands of dollars, and the fact that they had them in the crossover with the cameo was wonderful. So I guess we'll wrap it up here. It's not a deep movie. It's an interesting movie. It's funny. It is entertaining. Even with some of the maybe not so timely jokes, overall, I think it's got a lot of
it holds
to
up.
it.
Yeah,
and it does actually hold up. Even there's very little problematic things with it. So it does overall, I would say as well. Yes, it does hold up. So what's your final thought, Ian, with Trading Places?
Yeah, I mean, it's good. As I mentioned, I watched it, earlier this year, and it was the first time I think really watching it as an adult. But yeah, there's a lot to appreciate here, and I think I appreciate even more talking to you guys because you gave me a lot to think about, especially with Denholm Elliott. I mean, who knew? But yeah, I mean, that's the thing, and it's one of those movies where we've talked a lot about problematic stuff and kind of giving a lot of trigger warnings during this conversation. I don't know if anybody who's very far underneath our age is even going to watch it because it's 40 years old and ugh. I mean, the only thing that could make it worse if it were in black and white. But I think for the people who came of age with this movie, yes, there's a lot of, bawdy, raunchy, inappropriate humor, but I mean, it was funny and it's still funny.
Mhm.
And, it might be wrong according to modern sensibilities, but, most things in modernity are seen as wrong by future generations. So it's like,
Yeah.
what are you going to do?
what are you
Mm.
what are you gonna do? I think you should enjoy this, especially if you enjoy the talent, with Jamie Lee Curtis being in the forefront with her wonderful performance she put in on Everything Everywhere All at Once, and now apparently she's fantastic in The Bear, which is a TV series. She's in season 2 of The Bear, which a lot of people have said she was fantastic in. So if you're a fan of her and Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd, you may want to check it out. I think there's a lot of entertainment in here. Does get a little wonky with the trade scene in that third act, but by the end of it, it'll have you smiling. So I think so. Thank you so much. Thank you to my panel. Thank you to all the wonderful live people we had tune in tonight. We had a large group at 1.5 people looking at us. So I appreciate it. Robert, as always, Infobomb, we appreciate it. One last final tidbit from the gentleman. He says, Eric Idle said that when he guested on SNL, he felt Aykroyd was the only member of the troupe who could have been a member of the Monty Python. So that, I think, is probably one of the biggest compliments you could probably get in comedy.
Right.
Is having that said. Oh, and we got one more. Let's work at this because this is a good comment to, I think, end on it. What would a sequel look like to the panel? What would you want Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd to take on? So if they were going to do a Trading Places 2 somehow, come up with an idea, what would we want to see Valentine and Winthrop take on?
It would entail them getting off of the island, and I don't know why the hell they would want to do that. Really?
Why would you want to get off? Yeah.
That's sorry, go ahead, Mark.
There's the thoughts of sequels, and then there's, sometimes I think it's good to leave a movie where it's at, and it's just like, I think sometimes a movie can just have a happy ending.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm entirely happy with leaving it there. I think about where movies might go, where Trading Places 2 might go. I really don't know. It's when you're talking about farcical comedies, nothing is off the table as far as how crazy it might have to be to get them off the island and back into a circumstance. I was thinking, it's like, what would they do with like day trading or something like that? I don't know. But really, I am entirely happy with the thought of this as a nugget where the heroes ride off into the distance and live happily ever after.
Bringing us right back to Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
It's Crusade, yes. Once again, yeah.
But no, here's like, you're spot on, Mark, and I think I have the same sentiment. I say leave it alone. The only thing you can do, I think, is do a remake of Trading Places where you're going to replace Aykroyd and Murphy with probably female leads. That's just kind of the way that things are going, and you just remake the movie. But what's the point? I mean, you're going to end up probably in the same place. I think the spiritual successor to this film came out in 2015, 16, I think. It was called The Big Short. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Oh, yeah.
That is a financial crisis dramedy that I think was excellent because it does show the farcical nature of, how all these things, this digital money it's all phantoms, right? It's all people betting on stuff. It's a giant casino on Wall Street. It has real world consequences. There was a movie called 99 Homes, which was sort of the aftermath of the financial crisis, which is a straight up drama with Michael Shannon and Andrew Garfield, which is excellent. But yeah, there are movies that have tackled the same subject matter, I think, in a weird way, building on the foundation of Trading Places. So I think you leave all of it alone, just watch those movies and appreciate what we have.
Yeah,
I would say too. I mean, if for some reason someone felt the need to do a sequel, which after 40 years, wow, I didn't even time it that way. I just picked this movie, but it's been this is his 40th anniversary. After 40 years, I think I don't think you could use these same characters. It would have to be the generational thing to where it's their kids run into a problem or something. And then you have Aykroyd and Murphy show up at the end in cameos or some kind of thing. You know, that's how they would play a legacy sequel to it. It would be like the kids of Valentine and Winthorpe, or, you know, grandkids or whatever. It'd be them taking on, you know, whatever, cyber, you know, cryptocurrency or something. You know, I'm not sure where you would go with it. Yeah, there's some movies that that's their story, that's where it sits, and you can't really see too much going forward afterwards because it just, I don't think exactly works.
Yeah,
You know, it not without it really going. It would just you sit in the audience going, really, really, really. You know?
It's like, oh, come on, the original movie was contrived enough. We're trying this again.
Right.
Can I just take a moment to appreciate that Eddie Murphy was 22 years old when he did this movie?
Oh, wow. Well, it was his second movie, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Oh,
He's 22. He's 22 in a film with a few heavies as far as acting goes. So I mean, and he holds his own. I mean, you know, it's fun movie. I like it too. I even with it, I watch this. So my VHS.
It's the cast. It is the overall and ensemble cast, which is what makes it such a wonderful movie.
Exactly. Yeah, and never takes itself seriously. Never. I mean, and I think that would ruin it if it did. So there you have it, folks. Thank you so much for this a little bit longer than normal episode, but this has been a lot of fun. Hope you've been enjoying this stocking up. And as always, I give the floor to my guests so they can shill away. They get the license to shill so you can find out where their stuff is at. So, Mark, why don't you go ahead and I know you got a few things out there you could shill.
Oh, a few things. You know, just it's been a little bit difficult for musicians for the past 2 years, what with pandemic trying to play out and everything like that. Spaces Between is my music project on Spotify currently, working on our second album and actually trying to get out and, you know, play in front of people again. So see how that goes and, you know, actually do the whole live music thing. But Spaces Between, Spotify, that's where I've been at lately. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Mr. Ian Simmons, you might have a thing or two to plug, so please go ahead, sir.
Well, thanks. I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com, but mostly I'm on YouTube. If you go look up Kicking the Seat on YouTube, I'm there. Do weekly live streams, interviews, reviews, that kind of stuff. Actually not doing a live stream this week. I don't think. No, we're going to be doing, not Top Gun Maverick, Mission Impossible 7.
That was last year.
I think I caught a glimpse of the popcorn bucket over my shoulder from last summer. But yeah, Mission Impossible, you're going to be talking about Oppenheimer, Barbie, all the big stuff coming up.
Barbieheimer.
Barbieheimer. This sounds so filthy. But it's going to be it's the second biggest bomb of the summer, but we already talked about Dial of Destiny. Anyway, that's what I got.
There it is, folks. And specialmarkproductions.com if you're not aware of where you can find all our wonderful content that we've got coming. I'm a little behind on some reviews, but I got some coming, a written review. I actually do written reviews occasionally. We got I've been kind of busy with interviews lately. There's at least 4 new interviews in the last 2 weeks that I've got up, 4 or 5. Some wonderful interviews with some very talented folks. Yeah, you know, they play TikTok and all that. Threads. Now we're on Thread or Threads, whatever the hell it's called. So specialmarkproductions.com. Thank you for our viewers tonight. We had a great crew here. Robert, always glad to have you here. Infobomb, so glad you could tune in again. Thank you, GZ Doctor, for Ev, and I hope I pronounced that right. Appreciate your input. You had some great questions. Thank you to all our listeners. And now, I think until next time, just to tease you, next week will be a Perfect 10 episode where we're talking The Wolf of Wall Street. So prepare yourself for that, folks. Should be interesting. And until next time, we'll say good night, everyone.